Hey there, friends. Pastor Dave here with another weekly devotion for all the saints. We are beginning the season of Lent today. It is Ash Wednesday as I'm recording this, and I want to share a quick devotion from Sarah Arthur's Coffee with God. This is about disciplines. It's easy to beat ourselves up about all the ways we fail to do what God has commanded for our spiritual health or the renewal of our communities. We make commitments and then bemoan our inability to keep them. We vow to read the Bible and do our devotions every day, but instead we cram all the readings into one frantic morning a week or less. Pretty soon our lack of initiative feels hopeless and we give up trying altogether. On the other hand, it's important that we don't take ourselves too seriously or become legalistic about this whole faith thing. The last thing we want is a kind of works righteousness mentality in which we try to win God's approval by doing good deeds. And if we fail to keep it up, we're afraid God will be furious and punish us. If we ever reach that state, it's important to take a step back and say, okay, stop. This isn't about what I do for God, but about what God has done for me. Because Jesus lived a sinless life and died on our behalf, said the Apostle Paul, we have freedom from the bondage of religious legalism. See Romans chapter 3. Jesus is our righteousness. But this doesn't mean we become spiritual slugs either. Over the centuries, Christians have identified several spiritual practices or intentional behaviors that bring us into the presence of God and help us grow. These include prayer, Bible study, worship, solitude, silence, fasting, all of which Jesus himself did during the course of his life and ministry. These practices are also known as spiritual disciplines, not because they're some kind of punishment, but because this is what disciples or followers do. Notice that discipline and disciple share the same root. In the end, we don't practice the spiritual disciplines because we're trying to make God happy, like yet another form of religious legalism. We practice them because they draw us into a closer personal relationship with the living God. How can we expect to get to know him if we never spend any time with him? Saints, I thought this was a good devo for us to consider as Lent begins, because it's a season when we often try to discipline ourselves in a way, right? We try to give up certain things or even attempt new sorts of habits and patterns and practices. But often, I think we do go about it in a more legalistic way. I think sometimes our assumption about Lent is that it's really about determination, it's about force of will, it's about making a choice about what we're going to do and then sticking to it. And if we don't stick to it, we end up disappointed with ourselves. We assume God is disappointed with us. And I don't know that we've really accomplished anything very important. What if we considered Lent to be a season for renewed discipline rather than renewed effort to follow the rules? And here's the difference. When we are following a discipline, we're doing it for a purpose. When we're following the rules, oftentimes I think it's a very kind of theologically or even logically detached act. We just think, here's what I'm supposed to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and give it my best shot to do it. When we pick up a discipline, we have an opportunity to be more intentional about it. You know, if we're doing the discipline of fasting, for example, we could say, okay, here's the rule. I'm supposed to fast. I don't really know why, but I'm going to try it because it's supposed to be good for me spiritually. That leads us to a legalistic attempt at fasting. If the discipline of fasting is so that we become more in tune with our own appetites, with our own hungers, we become more in tune with perhaps those who feel hunger more regularly than we do, we become more in tune with Jesus' own spiritual hunger for God, then there is a reason for what we're doing that we can understand. The discipline moves us toward God in a concrete way. Try maybe Scripture, reading Scripture. We might think that, yes, we're supposed to have a daily practice of reading Scripture, and so the legalistic form of doing that is to say to myself, okay, I've got 15 minutes every day I've got to read. The disciplined way of doing that is to say, Scripture is a way that I can get connected with God. I can hear God's voice. And my desire is to get closer to God. So if I can use that time in Scripture to listen, to hear, to draw closer, then I'm making good use of the discipline. I might even have a particular way that I'm thinking about how I need to get closer to God. Maybe I really have a sense or a desire to understand God's heart for the widows and the orphans. Well, then I can focus what I read in Scripture on that in particular. If I just feel like I need to read Scripture, then I don't really have an intentional connection with what I'm doing. Saints, what are your goals for your relationship with God? I think that's the important place to start if we're going to pick up any kind of Lenten discipline. What is it that you think you need to accomplish? And then think about what disciplines will help you do that. It's your devotion for this week. Hope it's helpful, saints. Hope it's worth thinking about. Hope you're doing well and staying healthy. I'll be praying for you. Please keep praying for me, and I'll see y'all again soon. Take care.